You're ready.
So I'm Will Katz, the director of the KU Small Business Development Center. And man, it is a challenge doing stuff from home sometimes, isn't it? Just because the whole environment is a little bit different. The first thing I want to tell you, everybody, is that you're not crazy. This is a difficult time and we're all struggling. And we're trying to understand what resources are available, but there really aren't any magic buttons to push here. And I think anybody that knows me would say that I'm kind of a crazy optimist. And I think we're resilient and I think we can get through this, but I don't think it's going to be tomorrow or even next week. I think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be challenging. I think cash flow is going to be challenging, and you should be doing anything you can to preserve cash. That might include asking for loan modifications on current loans, putting together a financial triage plan for what you pay and what you don't pay at certain times. And so what I'm going to talk to you today about is just a tool in your tool belt. It's not magical, but I think it's something you need to know about. And this is the SBA EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. I'm willing to take questions on other stuff too, but I think that's kind of the first priority. So I'm going to do my best to get some information to you, but I want to make sure that you understand what I can give you and what I can't give you. I do have some experience with this, but I would not say I'm a subject matter expert. I've provided what the SBA calls technical assistance on some other SBA disaster lending programs. The last time I did this extensively was when the tornado hit Greensburg, Kansas. So my colleagues, Taylor LaRue and Christina Meese, are both on this call. And I know Taylor is set up to be a moderator, so she's going to try to answer some questions in the Q&A section and hopefully fill in some other blanks. And I will do so when I get done running through a few things here. But we're not going to do a perfect job of this. We are, however, going to do everything we can, and we are here now. So, there's a little bit of an information vacuum on this, and so I think that's what we're going to try to get across, the information that we can, because we're available to do it. And I think some of the SBA resources probably aren't. So the KU Small Business Development Center is technically an SBA partner organization. So Taylor and Christina and I actually work for the University of Kansas, but our program is what they call a cooperative funding model. And so the SBA is the federal level funder. And so we don't work for the SBA. We don't get all the same information that they get because our jobs are to be in the communities. And so we're more probably community focused than SBA guideline focused. But again, we have had I've had some training on this program before. We also got to sit through a conference call yesterday. And so I'm going to even show you some slides that come from that call. So again, just I think a massive information vacuum in general. Everybody wants to know more about this program. Last I heard, 187 signups, and man, I feel terrible because y'all got stuck with me. So I'm going to tell you everything I know, and I'm not sure that that will be everything that you want to know or that you need to know. Again, because there are no magic levers to pull, there are resources. You're not crazy. These resources are very confusing. There are lots of programs out there, and then you've also got, I'd say, apocryphal references to other programs that may be coming online. A couple of examples. You had that HIRE fund in Kansas. The state of Kansas did a really good job of putting something together really quickly. They put $5 million towards this thing. You had 1,346 applications for $5 million. They changed the max award from about 20 grand to about 15 grand to allow them to give 330 awards, right? So there was a lot more demand than what that program could support. There must have been a little bit more than 1,000 good applications that were submitted that didn't get funded. And I know they were good because I was on an initial review team reviewing applications and sending them up, and I sent them all up. They were all good. The stimulus package that is in DC right now, I'm told, contains some forgivable loans, where if you keep people on payroll through July, those loans will be wiped away. I do not know anything about that. There's no guidance on that. Bonnie Lowe just sent me an email about 5 minutes before this started about a revision to the SBA 7A program that is intended to cover for employers payroll from the February to June period. Again, those two programs, the Forgivable loan and then the 7A modification, I do not know if they are the same program or not. But I do know that the SBA EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan, that I'm going to talk about, completely separate from all of that. This is a separate, discrete, existing program. And so I'm going to start with my top 5 tips from the training that I went through yesterday. Tip number 1, the website is overwhelmed. Click save often if you get in, and use off-peak times, which they tell us, there's a cat back there, which they tell us is 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Tip number 2, use paper forms to take a look at what you need offline before you go online. It will be faster if you don't have to go online, find the form, download it, then go back and hope that the website didn't lock up or that you forgot to hit save. Tip number 3, I think this is the most important one. Remember these 4 letters. Burn them into your forehead if you must. EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan. If you go to that disaster lending portal, there are a whole bunch of different programs. I think that if you put in Douglas County, Kansas, what you're going to find is that there may still be some disaster loan programs from the tornado last year or possibly from flooding. It's easy. If you don't remember EIDL, you're going to go into the decision tree on that website and you're going to find yourself in something that is not the EIDL. So remember EIDL. Number 4, there is not a blank on the application for you to request a loan amount. The SBA is going to make an estimate of that loan amount based on what you show them. And I'm going to go through that in a little bit more detail. And then tip number 5, if you apply now, it does not obligate you to take a loan. There will be, we have been told, a 3, possibly 4-week wait from when you submit an application until you are called by a loan officer. Then you would get loan closing paperwork, and then probably another week or 2 before you close. So I would not anticipate this moving any faster than 4 to 6 weeks. And I think that would be 4 weeks would be pretty darn quick. But you can, and you probably should, if you think that this is for you, apply now. You don't have to take it when the time comes. So I am going to try to share a few slides if I can. And what you're going to see, again, I got this yesterday. I'm not going to show you the entire 63 slide deck that I got yesterday. I think I pulled out about 10 or 12 of them. And I'm going to go through. I'm not very good at screen sharing, so you'll see the slide. You might also see the notes at the bottom that I took from when I got the presentation yesterday. So, boom. Can you see the slides, Kim?
Yes, I can see them.
Okay. So.
And chat says we can as well, so we're good.
Awesome. So the first slide that I wanted to share is just about eligibility. And so you can see in my notes at the bottom, most ag businesses are not going to be eligible. So for example, growers. My guess is that there will be separate USDA programs. These will not be SBA. This will not go under the EIDL. I am absolutely not up to speed on them. Second note that I wanted to make here is that most nonprofits are eligible. Religious organizations, not, but most nonprofits, yes. So for example, the example they gave us yesterday, a church maybe that has a daycare that's sort of its own separate thing. That daycare as a nonprofit probably would be eligible here. Gambling concerns, racetracks, casinos, not eligible. My strong suspicion is that almost everybody that's on this call probably is eligible. The next slide that I wanted to show you, just a little bit of a basic stuff about criteria for loan approval. The main thing that they told us yesterday, they're just looking at, would you have the ability to repay the loan? Number 2, they want to ensure that the losses come from the economic harm associated with this event. not due to some other reason. So for example, if you had 2019 tax returns that showed a pretty significant issue with the business, that business might not be approved for something like this. Yes, they look at credit score. They told us they didn't even know if there was an automatic threshold where a personal credit score would disqualify you. And if there is, they don't know what that minimum is. How much can you borrow? This slide tells you you can qualify up to $2 million. Interest rates are 3.5% for businesses, or 3.75, I'm sorry, 2.75 for nonprofits. This says terms of up to 30 years, but Taylor, correct me if I'm wrong. I think they said yesterday they're not doing up to 30 years. They're basically just, bam, doing 30-year terms on all this stuff.
That's correct, yes.
I think they also said, Taylor says yes, they also said there are no prepayment penalties. So if you take the whole thing out and you can pay it faster, good. This is the money is to be used for working capital needs. And the other thing that they told us is that they're looking at 6 months of operating expenses. The way they were planning to calculate that is your annual gross income divided by 2. So if you look at your 2019 income statement, or if you look at your 2019 tax return, you'll have revenue, you'll have cost of goods sold. Revenue minus cost of goods sold is gross profit, not net profit, gross profit, revenue minus cost of goods sold. So half of what your gross profit was in 2019, starting point. If that number is more than $200,000, they did say there would be some extra analysis. They also mentioned on this slide that this is not intended for expansion, but just for solvency. So if you're thinking of trying to engage in this program to buy a fancy new widget making machine, probably not the right program. Again, they told us that loans over $25,000 are going to require some collateral, at least when it's available. They're not going to decline loans for lack of collateral, but they do want you to pledge what is available. I wanted to put this slide up because it has some of the basic paperwork requirements that you're going to need. If you remember in my little top 5 tips, I said, hey, know what you're going to need. SBA Form 5 is actually the online form that you will fill out. Form 4506T is an authorization for the IRS to release your tax returns to the SBA. I believe this is for personal and for business. You'll have to, and I remember when we were in Greensburg, crazy, you know, tornado demolished the town. Like people couldn't go to their filing cabinets and pull last year's tax returns or the year before because the filing cabinet was in another county somewhere. So everybody was doing these 4506. It's just a, yes, the IRS can release my tax return information to the SBA. They told us yesterday, I believe, that anybody who is a 20% or more owner in the business will be required to fill out the 4506T. Most recent tax return, schedule of liabilities, SBA Form 2202. You can Google that document and find it. Personal financial statement, SBA Form 413. Man, I Google this probably once a week and give it to people. It's just a real simple personal statement of assets and liabilities, like a statement of net worth. So those are some things, if you're thinking about getting started, you're not sure what to do, those would be the forms that I would tell you, at least pull them up and look at them before you deal with the overwhelmed website. That overwhelmed website is here, disasterloan.sba.gov/ELA. You can get paper applications. They are strongly discouraging that. You can also call this SBA Customer Service Center if you need assistance. Numbers on here, but I'll read it to you in case you want to write it down. 800-659-2955. So again, the SBA considers us at the SBDC a partner organization, and they want us to be able to answer questions at least broadly and vaguely. I don't think you will run into limits with what Christina and Taylor and Will know. And so our job is to, again, do the best we can and to be here now. there's a very good chance that I haven't even looked at the questions in chat. There's a very good chance I will only be able to answer some of them. If I can't answer it, this is the number that they would have you call. But again, it could be a while before you get to people who know more than me. A couple of other notes I took on this slide. The standard that they look at in these situations is usually whether or not you've been in business 12 months. They told us yesterday for somebody who's been in business less than 12 months, or if there's been a transfer of ownership inside of 12 months, you should apply anyway. It's not a hard no, it's just more of a case-by-case basis with less than 12 months. There is no cost to apply. I think that's pretty important to know. It's certainly possible there are enough scammers in the universe that you could find yourself on some website that's like a forwarder or somebody who collects the application and collects the information and submits the application for a fee. If you're paying a fee, you are not applying to the SBA. You did not go to this website. Also important to note, there is no obligation to accept the loan if it is offered to you. So this will be a process. You apply now, the processing time takes 3 or 4 weeks. The loan officer calls you, you put together, they help you put together what they need. They put together closing documents. Until you sign that closing document, you are not obligated to accept that money. So again, crazy as it sounds, I think they're kind of encouraging people to apply now because just in case. And yes, the system is overwhelmed, but again, no obligation to accept it. I asked the question yesterday, how much has been pledged for this? And they gave me this number, 18 billion. I don't know that that will be enough if you do the math. And I think they said the average awarded loan on this so far was about $100,000. So what's that, 180,000 businesses out of about 30 million small businesses in the United States. I don't know if it will be enough. My opinion only an opinion, is that this is one of those programs that would almost certainly be extended because it's been in operation for a long time. This is one of those things where, ooh, the program's almost out of money. Congress, please, can you go back and allocate more money to it? To me, this seems like a very likely one to be reallocated if it gets used up. The next slide is a picture of the disaster loan application portal. You'll go to that website, disasterloan.sba.gov/ELA, and then you'll click that little middle button to apply. And I'm not going to show you all these slides, trust me, I've only got a few more. You'll begin the application by clicking register. Seems pretty self-explanatory, but there's one in particular I wanted to show you, and it's not this one. You'll apply online. It's this one, and this is my last slide. I don't know if you can see this very well, but in the second group of bullets, are you applying for? It says real property, it says business contents, it says EIDL, and then it says something else that I can't even read because it's too small. They told us that you should click only the EIDL button at this time. If there's other stuff that you're applying for, like a real property disaster relief loan, that would probably be a different application. So this is one of those cases where EIDL, remember those 4 letters, this is where you need to apply them. Let me see what other notes I had here. Let's see. Well, how about we take some questions? Taylor, Kim, you guys want to lob out some softballs for me? Easy ones only.
I'll read you a few. This
okay.
There's a question that says, thank you for doing this. Is there financial help coming for the owners of small business, not just the employees?
Yeah, that's a tough one. And so as probably most of you know, well, actually, maybe a lot of people don't know it. If you own an LLC that has filed an S Corp election, you're probably paying yourself on payroll. And you're also probably contributing, that some of that payroll deduction goes into the Kansas unemployment pool. And so you might very well be an eligible employee of that S Corp as an owner. LLCs, unless they have filed the S Corp, no, they don't pay into Kansas unemployment. If there is any help available, it would have to be part of the stimulus package that, frankly, I haven't even had much of a chance to look through today. You know, I think the stimulus package had some kind of payment of some certain amount per person anyway. So I would think an LLC owner would probably be eligible for that. I think this is kind of a hole in our approach to helping small businesses. I mean, frankly, I'm going to take a little detour here because I can. You know, this is a really different situation than what we faced in 2008. In 2008, the crisis that we were in came from the financial sector. And so it started with collateralized debt obligations and derivative financial tools that were related to that. It began as a financial sector crisis. And so if you think back to the first headlines we saw, they were about bank failures and layoffs largely in the financial sector. That spilled over to everybody to some degree. But let's face it, in Kansas, we probably never felt the same effect in terms of unemployment in the state, in terms of the hit to property values that might have been felt in California or New York. It was never quite as bad. It was a little bit muted here compared to there. This is different. This is really different. This is a demand side economic issue. And I think that it's going to impact everybody pretty equally, no matter where they are in the country. And I think that makes it a challenge because in 2008, I think that things that were done by the Federal Reserve were probably pretty helpful because what the Federal Reserve can do is shore up the credit system on the financial side. So for a financial sector hit, that probably works. This is something completely different. And Fed Reserve Chairman Powell, I think, has been pretty clear that this requires not monetary policy, which is what the Fed controls, but fiscal policy, and that's what the Congress does. So I think that the stimulus package that they're talking about today, that I assume is either approved or will soon be, is $2 trillion. And I think that compares to about $800 billion for the 2008 bailout. So big. And also, by the way, this is the third, I think, stimulus bill that's already passed. And I don't think they're done, quite frankly. I think I've certainly seen some estimates, and I believe these estimates, that the final fiscal stimulus might be more between $4 and $6 trillion. So my guess is that we're a third to a half of the way there. And I don't know of anything specific to help LLC owners other than the payment per person. I hope it's out there because I think it's important. But again, it's a scramble for resources right now, and it's confusing even to understand where they all are, where they will be, how they will be implemented. So it's a good question. I don't think I have a very good answer. Next.
Okay, let's see. Are there any 0% interest loans?
Taylor, do you know of any? Because I don't.
I cannot think of any, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can't think of any. You know, these loans are, what do we say, 3.75% for for-profit, 2.75 for nonprofit. I honestly can't think of anything out there that I'm seeing that's lower than that. Yeah, I guess I just don't know of any yet.
Okay, let's see. If the owners/partners get salary, do we file as a S Corp?
I think the question is, if the owners are getting salary, does that mean that they have filed the S election? And the answer is probably yes. I don't know if you're doing your own bookkeeping / accounting or not. If not, I would recommend that you talk to the person who's doing the actual payroll. But probably, usually when I see owners that are receiving some kind of a biweekly payment, it's set up to go through payroll, and payroll deductions are coming out of it. And my understanding is that those folks would probably be eligible for unemployment at the state of Kansas.
All right. Any recommendations for super small businesses who maybe don't need a loan but could use a couple months of rent forgiveness?
Probably my best recommendation there is to talk to your landlord, talk to whoever can grant that forgiveness. I mean, this is again, the demand side problem, big problem impacting almost everybody. I talked to a banker earlier today who tells me that more than 80% of his portfolio is on interest only right now, or at least in the process of asking for that and moving to interest only. So, again, EIDL, this is only one tool in the toolkit, and the things that you should be talking about are anything you can do to preserve cash, anything that you can do to make sure that you can, especially if the business is still operating, buy the stuff that you need to generate what revenues you can generate. So, talking to landlords, talking to any bank, if you have an existing loan or line of credit, it's definitely time to talk about a loan modification if you need something like that. Just ask the banker what they can do. Be prepared to share with them what the impact has been. Gosh, in January and February, my revenues were here, and now they are here and trending the wrong way, and now I have to be closed for the next 30 days. I think most of the time, bankers and landlords understand that they can only succeed if you do. So if they can do something to help you that doesn't bend them beyond where they can go, I think that they will do it for the most part. I certainly haven't heard even any stories otherwise to this point.
Okay, next question. It might be something outside of our wheelhouse. Like you mentioned, we just received kind of a basic overview on this training. But the question is, can a 10% owner be included on the application because it will improve the look of the finances?
I think the requirement is that 4506 T has to be filed if the person owns more than 20%. But yeah, I think I would, if it improves the application, I think it'd probably be good to include a 10% owner. I don't see how it could be bad. Let's put it that way.
There is another question here. An over 20% member recently financed their house. They are waiting for closing. At what point is the credit checked? And I was just going to say, I think it's on one of the first couple pages. There is the ability to write a narrative. And so if that's a concern, that could be also a place that you could justify it a little bit. But do you have anything to add to that?
Just to say that in my experience, that would not concern me. I think that probably, again, I don't think they have a credit minimum threshold. I think if they did, and if your credit was good enough to buy a house, you'd probably be over that threshold anyway. But then I also think that, yes, there is the ability to give a little bit of a narrative. That's something I would probably include.
My business operations are continuing but have been cut back, so partial layoffs for employees. Workshare was a program I saw as an option for this. Any thoughts on this with new stimulus package or general comments on this program?
I think Workshare is a great program. Most of my history before I took the job at BBC was that I was a manufacturing manager. Probably some of you all remember E&E Display Group out at 27th and Haskell, and I worked there for 27 years. For 17 years. And we certainly had some seasonal fluctuations, and Workshare is a great program. At the time, we were really happy with the way that it was administered by the state. And so for those of you who don't know, Workshare is really good if you're doing partial layoffs. If your employees are working, I think it's from 60 to 80% of the time that they would normally have been working, they can receive that 60%. They could be paid for you for 60% of that time and then receive 40% of what their unemployment benefit would have been. My understanding is that the wait week for unemployment benefits has been waived for COVID-19. And so that's a help for everybody. I think it's helpful. You probably can't make your full payroll on reduced operations. And this is a way to help your employees if you put them in that work share program. So I think that's a really good step to what I was talking about earlier, which is just managing cash flow, making sure that every penny that goes out is going out for something that helps you generate revenue. And paying employees is a very important part of generating revenue. So yes, I think that's a good thing.
All right, this is an important answer for everyone that's on the call. The question is, if we participate in this program, will it restrict future eligibility for stimulus opportunities?
Couldn't possibly know that at this point. My sense is no, just because, I don't see how it could. The stimulus programs are pretty confusing to me. So one of the apocryphal stimulus stories is that there was, and I don't know if this is something that was appended to the 7A program, but forgivable loans if you kept employees on payroll through July. You know what? For most businesses, I think that horse done left the barn already. That decision probably has had to have been made, certainly if not by this week, then by next week. And I'd be shocked if we had enough clarity to know that it was within our ability to take a loan that would sometime in the future be forgivable if we kept meeting payroll for starting now and through July. Again, I'm no policymaker. To me, that seems like something that maybe could have been accomplished better for smaller business by supplementing the state unemployment programs or using something to make LLC owners whole, as somebody mentioned before. This program is such a long-standing program that I would be shocked. The other thing I would tell you is I would not let that keep me from applying, because there wouldn't be any kind of a decision made on this for at least 3, maybe 4 weeks, and you wouldn't be in a position to close until at least 5, maybe 6 weeks. And so if something does come out of the stimulus that would make it a penalty to have used this program, I think what happens then is you just say, never mind, I changed my mind, I don't want that. This program, by applying, you're not committing to taking it, you're not committed to participating, and it will be a while.
Okay, so lots of questions on here about if all of the slides will be shared, and I am exchanging emails with someone at the SBA office in Wichita, and yes, they can be, so we'll be sure to email those out to everyone. Let's see. I think there was some confusion earlier about LLCs not being eligible for the program, but that is incorrect. They are eligible.
These are most definitely eligible. In fact, sole proprietors are eligible for this. I think, Taylor, you correct me if I'm wrong, but on the page where you do the online application, I think there's a separate checkbox for if you're a sole proprietor, and it's a different form. So it's form 5 for everybody else, and I think it's like form 5C for sole proprietors. Is that
correct? Right? Yes.
Okay.
So for the question with, for those of us who are sole proprietors, any extra steps, it's just a different form that you'll be filling out.
Correct. That's right.
Someone says, where would we find the work-share program information?
Well, off the top of my head, I know we've got a link to that on our Facebook page, right, Taylor? So like if you go to
yeah,
Facebook, KU Small Business Development Center would just be the search term. You probably have to scroll down a little bit, but I know we've got some information about work-share. I think there's probably some, like the chamber has the, it looks like somebody might have just shared it. Mike Hathaway. Thanks, man. Is that what that, yeah, that's what that is. Good job. Somebody's quick on the keyboard.
All right. Do you foresee unemployment insurance rates increasing for companies choosing to do layoffs during this time?
Pretty far out of my scope of experience. I think in the past that there have certainly been times when like they looked at periods where things like this happened and calculated that into to how they figured the unemployment pay-ins for the employers. So I don't know. I mean, I just can't answer that question. I would think there would be some adjustment. It may have some impact. I think for most businesses, though, it's sort of like you don't want to do it anyway, right? You kind of do it because you have to get by. So worth considering, sure, but probably a little bit down on my list of like if I had to do it, I would probably just do it.
I do see someone sent a chat that says, call your commercial insurance provider as well. Ours got our insurance payment lowered as our staff currently isn't working.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. So for like workers' comp insurance, if you are now insuring fewer people, yeah, great point.
Earlier, there was a statement about loan forgiveness. Can you repeat what was said on the subject?
Well, I think what I was talking about, there have been some apocryphal stories, as we've all probably followed pretty closely the stimulus discussions in the United States Congress. And one of the big things that has been mentioned a lot is this notion of forgivable loans for payroll. So if employers kept employees on payroll now, they could take out a loan that would then be forgiven if they kept those employees on payroll through whatever the date is, July 31st. A lot of times what happens is these decisions are made in a hurry, right? They're trying to spend $2 trillion and figure out how to do that in about 96 hours. Not easy to do. And so then like guidance comes on these things a little bit later. So I've never seen anything like that. But my sense is just that as a business owner, it would be hard for me to keep people on payroll that I knew I couldn't afford just so that I could apply for that program, just so that the loan could be forgiven. I think that's a risky bit of calculus. If there's an opportunity to take care of what the employee's needs would be through the unemployment program, which exists now, then I'm not sure why I would borrow money and hope it got forgiven based on a program that I couldn't even read yet because it wasn't out.
All right. There are a lot of questions in here. Let's see.
Okay.
One says, when do you think we will know more from the federal government program?
You just mean about this, I guess that's just in relation to the stimulus in general. I think that things will start trickling out in the next day or two. I think it sounds like a pretty comprehensive set of stuff. So I think I would say it'd be at least probably a week and maybe longer before we would know everything in there that will impact small businesses and figure out how the implementation of those policies will be structured.
Thank you. Currently putting together the Excel mass layoff application. Can I apply for unemployment for my part-time workers or just full-time?
Somebody else is probably gonna have to take that one, but there's a threshold on that. Taylor, do you know what it is? How many hours?
I know I've got it written down somewhere. If you give me a minute, I'm sure I can find it.
Somebody can answer that in the chat, right? I probably should know. What is it? It's like 25 or 35, maybe, I don't know. Where's Mike Hathaway? He had that quick link to Workshare.
All right, when we get an answer, we'll come back to that one.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Someone says you can apply for full or part-time, no minimum hours required.
Ooh, I think that might be a change then, right?
Anyone else got any input on that one?
That's good.
Are there any current obligations to keep employees paid versus laying them off? Kind of goes along with another one. If we've got where was it? We have cash flow for payroll now, but would it be smart to actually temporarily lay off employees and have them apply for unemployment?
So this is one of those decisions that, I think the very first thing that I said when the recording started was, you are not crazy. Like, these times are unprecedented. There's not a rule book. There's not a playbook. You can't just look back on like what people have done in the past, because this is really very different from probably any other situation you have faced or will face as a business owner. So for something like that, the thing that I tell business owners is you can only make that decision. I mean, I would do my best to make that decision consistent with my the way that I've done business and with my personal values and the mission of the business and the values of the business. I mean, it's tough, and I'm not trying to put any value judgment on, bad to lay off or good to lay off, because it just depends. I suppose if you have so much cash sitting around that you could afford to pay employees for X period of time, you probably would if you could. I think you just have to decide what's right for you. One of the difficult things for business owners right now is that I don't think we really know for sure how long this is going to be. I think, we're on shelter in place for another 4 weeks here, so probably at least that long, right? But after that, I'm just not sure we know what's going to happen. So I think anyone who doesn't struggle with answering that question for themselves, you might want to look in the mirror and make sure you can still see your reflection, because I think you'd have to be a vampire to have an easy answer to that question. This is too hard. The question's really individual.
Okay, hotels have suffered tremendous losses already, with NCAA and KU suspending the rest of the activities for the time being. Further hurt us as it creates a ripple effect and cancellation of all university events and spring sport activities. How do we account for those losses during our application process?
I don't think you do. I think on the EIDL application, if it's just the EIDL application that you're filling, I don't believe that they account for that. I think it's more that simple calculation of what were your revenues minus cost of goods sold, gross profit, half of that. Now, I will tell you that we were given some direction on the call yesterday that that's not the only factor. That's just sort of a kind of an initial calculation. So it just so happens that the president of the United States owns some hotels too. And so I think that that's an industry that people are certainly talking about more than they might have otherwise. There may be some things in the stimulus that would address it. And again, because this is so unlike 2008, I think hotels are going to be one of the more hard-hit industries for sure, just because, people can't move around, people can't travel. So you're not crazy. I just don't think we know the answers to that yet.
All right, we've got a couple more answers in regards to part-time, full-time employees for unemployment.
Okay.
Everyone, from what I'm seeing, is it's my understanding that anyone can be included in the unemployment filing. One person says they're including everyone except those who opt out. So.
Okay, good to know.
Let's see. Says, I missed the beginning, but can a small C Corp apply for a loan to pay employees? Isn't this money application for employees?
Yeah, so no, I would say I wouldn't look at it that narrowly. The loans that have been floated to pay employees are part of the stimulus package, and this is a pre-existing program. The Economic Injury Disaster Lending Program is a separate thing. And so the way that they refer to this in the SBA's literature is it's for working capital. So it could include payroll, but it is not the thing that you probably have heard about in stimulus discussions, that is to pay employees specifically.
All right. My business was an LLC until the beginning of 2020 when we switched to an S Corp and I began paying myself a salary. The people working in my business are contract workers, not employees. It's set up similar to a hair salon where the workers pay me a percentage of their income. Would I even be eligible for this type of loan?
Yes. I mean, it's a for-profit business with a physical presence. Yeah.
Couple questions on here, going back a little bit about how this is calculated. And so you mentioned revenue minus cost of goods sold. What form / question is that? Do you just want to kind of clarify about how they're determining the amount?
Could you repeat that?
Yes. Just do you want to go over kind of how they're calculating the amount?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So what they told us was that like there's not even a blank on there for you to make a guess as to how much you need. Basically, they're going to calculate that, and their starting point is simply last year's revenues. How much money did you bring in last year, minus last year's cost of goods sold. So your gross profit for last year, and then divide that by 2. What they're trying to get at is 6 months of working capital. That's how they come up with it. So again, back to the question about hotels, they were pretty clear with us that that was a starting point, and it didn't necessarily have to be an ending point. But they were like, if you want to give people some idea, this is how we take our first run at it.
All right. My company's services fit into a gray area of being essential. I see many other similar companies continuing to work. Is there someone we can contact to get advice on this? It impacts whether we are going to have layoffs or not.
Ooh, that's a really good question. I'm wondering if Michael or Kim or Bonnie or anybody else on the call, Lindsay, might have some input into that. I mean, that kind of falls into that category of questions that I think is kind of unanswerable. It's, you know, I'm pretty good at answering a question if you give me a income statement and a balance sheet and tell me to figure out the value for the business. But boy, when it comes to questions like that, it's hard because there just aren't easy and smooth answers. Yeah.
All right. We do not do the mass filing for unemployment. We receive the request through the slide system and answer the questions for each employee that filed. Is that okay, or do we need to do a mass filing?
I think that's okay. It probably might have just taken longer. Like, I think the reason that they like the mass filing, the way the Department of Labor encourages people to use that because I think it's easier for you to process, and I think it's probably easier for them to process too. I certainly didn't receive any direction that led me to believe that that would impact whether benefits were awarded or not. Let's put it that way.
And you can find that spreadsheet. There's a link to it on our Facebook page, as well as it's just on the Kansas Department of Labor site. And then someone had asked me the other day where you send that once it's completed. There is a place for you to upload it on that site. It's at the top and kind of hidden, but then you would log into your Department of Labor account and upload it there.
I think the chamber might have had that on their resource guide as well. So.
Okay, I've got a request to repeat the question about non-essential versus essential. So the question was, my company's services fit into a gray area of being essential. I see many other similar companies continuing to work. Is there someone we can contact to get advice on this? It impacts whether we are going to have layoffs or not.
Yeah, that's a great question. Do we have anybody with the county maybe that's on this call?
Oops, Sally says, can I answer? Is there a way that we can unmute her?
I
Yeah,
will figure out
you
how to
can.
unmute Sally. Hold
Okay.
on.
Thank you, Sally.
I
And
figured
it
that
looks
might.
like Christina, I didn't click on the link, but it looks like she may have uploaded the spray off spreadsheet link. So thanks, Christina.
Okay. Okay, Sally, I see 2 of you signed in. I unmuted both of them. You should be able to answer the question, I think. No?
One of Sally's still says muted.
It does. Okay, I'm trying to click on it and it's not paying attention.
Hmm.
I'm not sure why Sally has 2 sessions, but that's cool, Sally.
Because she's 2 times as smart as the
I
rest.
know, but now I can't get that one. Oh, Sally, I can't get you unmuted, girl. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this Sally that is not talking and see if that will help.
Oh, our colleague down at Pitt State says in Crawford County, you can call the health department.
No, they both say Sally's Ograi. That's not.
Oh, no. This was just an answer to the question.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, Sally, I can't get you unmuted for some reason. I'm so sorry.
It says, can we ask what services this business provides? So if you answer that question, wanna.
Hi, Joni and Ben.
I don't want to call you out without your permission.
Yeah, so Amanda says you have to answer that question with your gut. I think I was on a call with the county this morning, and basically they said, look, we're not going to have rolling patrols on the streets asking for identification and justification, and I think that's true. So yeah, I think so in some cases you're just going to have to make these decisions in the gray areas as a business owner, like it or not. If you own a business, and I have said this countless times this week, but you are a leader in our community. What you do matters. Every decision that you make matters, and the best thing that you can do is be as consistent as you can possibly be with your historical values and with your personal values. These are crazy times, but the more that we can stay true to ourselves and the line through all the things that we've ever done, the better. So I think you answered.
Well, if I can chime in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I got a call from a colleague in Topeka that they had done the stay at home in that county. And originally the hotels were not an essential business, and they lobbied and they became an essential business. So I think
Right.
you need to maybe lobby you're an essential business. And I think the idea of talking to the county, which was the ones that put together the stay home, might be the right place to start.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. Thanks, Michael.
All right, Sally, they provide painting services. I'm sure y'all can see that, but Lindsay says it's the health department and the health officer that make those decisions. Thanks, Lindsay.
So yeah, if you've got a question about that, then I would try to call the health department for the county. Can't hear you, Sally, no. Neither of you, there's 2 of you again. Okay, Taylor, any other questions? I can't really keep up with all the flying words over there, but.
I know, there's a lot. Okay, what kind of requirements for use will this loan have, and what kind of documentation of proof do you expect to be required?
What kind of uses? Again, I think the SBA has been intentionally non-directive about that. And so they say it is for working capital needs, 6 months of working capital needs. In theory, what they're trying to do is give you 6 months of working capital that you'll pay back. Again, remember, they're doing only 30-year terms on this thing. So they're trying to give you 6 months of capital that will get paid back, over a really long period of time, trying to minimize the cash flow impact out into the future. So yeah, they don't specify. I mean, you could use it to pay payables, to pay employees, whatever the things are that you need to do cash flow wise to keep the business alive. And then as for what paperwork, the things that I know about are that Form 4506T, which is the authorization to the IRS to release tax returns to the SBA, schedule of liabilities, SBA Form 2202, personal financial statement, SBA Form 413, complete copies of your most recent tax return, if I didn't already say that. And then you have to fill out Form 5, which is the form that you would get to online.
All right, if you guys have any kind of last minute questions, you can submit those real quick. We're probably going to wrap it up here shortly.
Wrap it up, Taylor. I got all day.
Let's see.
In fact, I don't have to drive home. I don't have to pick up my kid from school. We can go till 8, 9.
And it looks like if you guys go to the questions, Lindsay provided the Lawrence Douglas County Public Health Coronavirus line, and it looks like it's available 24/7. So.
Ooh, very good. Thanks, Lindsay. That's 785-856-4343. That's a good number.
All right, Sally, do you want to wrap it up?
Is she unmuted now?
Am I? Can you hear me?
Oh, Sally, there you are. Okay.
Yay.
Well, maybe Sally should answer that question.
Yes.
I was just going to say that, make the case, yes, it has to be okayed, but I did this for the retailers who are not essential, but they want to stay in business doing curbside pickup, right? Because it's specifically laid out or spelled out that restaurants can do that. And so, yes, retail can do that as long as they're practicing, kind of the minimum number of staff required to fulfill the orders, and they're practicing appropriate social distancing and sanitizing, et cetera, inside the business. And then, with the no contact pickup or curbside delivery, however you want to call it. And I contacted Sarah Plinsky, actually, and I asked her that question a few days ago when this all hit. I think.
Sally got muted again. So, but just to extend that point a little bit, keep in mind, these are all people making decisions. And so
right.
People aren't perfect. And if they have made a decision that impacts you, that you think is not the right decision, again, my experience here is that most people are pretty to listening to what it is that you have to say.
Right. And the order does say that, you're allowed to carry out activities that are essential to keeping your business in business, basically. And also for the health and safety of your business. It's like if you need to be on site in your jewelry store because you can't have a robbery, you can't leave it just abandoned. Well, yeah, you can be there, but you have to practice the appropriate procedures. But I would just explain what it is, that you're doing. And there was an article yesterday, Chad's article, about, the construction is still going on. There are a lot of construction projects going on. So obviously it's a different scale as a small business owner, but it's worth asking.
Dalton Paley mentions painting is listed as a specific exclusion on the Douglas County list with most other trades. And I think an exclusion to the shutdown order, I think is what he said.
Okay, great.
I just want to add that I'm thinking that when we get more information of what the stimulus package looks like, we could probably put together another meeting like this and find somebody who can talk about it and give us as much detail. As Will is saying, it's going to take a while to leak out what it's going to ultimately look like, but I think it would be beneficial if we did another meeting like this with somebody who can talk about the federal stimulus program in greater detail.
Yeah, no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so that's probably not going to be me. I'd look for, if you could get a legislator like any of the representatives in DC, that'd be awesome. But
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people are responding to that positively. So Michael and I will be able to work on that again like this. We do have a lot of questions still open. I think it would take us another like hour and a half to get through them all. So I don't know that we can get that all done in this time frame. I am seeing kind of, if you want to end on it, are some questions about requirements and documentation and proof of documentation. I'm seeing that quite a bit. Do you want to speak to that and give us some parting words, Will?
Well, what I just kind of condensed 13 out of the 63 slides that we got from the SBA, and one of them kind of lists the basic filing requirements. Again, it's Form 5 is the application. Form 4506T authorizes the IRS to get your tax returns to the SBA. Copies of the most recent complete federal income tax return. I do know that if you have it for 2018 and that's the most recent one, okay, that's fine. And then they'll ask for income statement and possibly balance sheet information for 2019. Schedule of liabilities, SBA Form 2202, and then personal financial statement, SBA Form 413.
Yeah, and Dalton just posted a link to the document center in the chat. So if everyone wants to go to that, that looks like a really helpful link as well. Do you have resources that people can go to get some of these other questions answered? Because like I'm seeing some about health insurance premiums and just there's a lot of in here that it's very varied, and I think they're all important. So I don't want people to feel like we're not addressing them, but maybe having some more resources would be good.
Yeah, Kim, I don't know. I wonder if we can kind of save the questions that are in there right now, and then maybe you and I could kind of go back and look and put them in groups and maybe just develop an FAQ that we'd be able to send out to folks.
I love that. I will copy them all out. So if your question has not been answered, we will find a way to get some of that information to you.
Yeah, and I want to qualify that a little bit because, like I said at the very beginning, I'm happy to answer questions I can on things that I can, but, ask Taylor or Christina many times over the course of any given day in our office, the answer to that question is, you better go see your CPA, your attorney, your insurance agent's phone number is on the wall back here. Like, we are generalists, as generalists can be. So like a question about health insurance probably is not going to be one I can answer.
Okay.
I'm happy to look through all that stuff and we can kind of section stuff out that we could answer.
Great. Okay. Well, that I think we should probably wrap up. We've been on for an hour now, and that seems to be a good time, a good amount for a webinar to keep everyone's interest in. So I want to thank everyone for coming on, and I want to thank Will and Taylor. Their knowledge is amazing, and I really think you're a big community asset. So if you have not worked with Will before, you should definitely think about doing it because I think he's a big help. So
thank you. You're too kind.
Like I said, I am going to be sending out a link to this video as soon as it gets done, saving onto my computer. I'm going to post it on the Unmistakably Lawrence Industry Resources page, and I will send it out via email to the attendee list. I know that there were a lot of people that could not get into the webinar, so if you have any friends, let them know that they will be getting that information. I've been answering emails on that during the webinar, so we will get you resources as quickly as we can. So we're
SBA slides will also be going out with that.
thanks,
Kim, you
Tyler.
did a
I'll
great
get that
job.
sent to you.
Okay.
Kim, you did a great job with having to switch over to a webinar and kind of taking on the responsibility for getting 200 people. That's really cool, and I appreciate that you did that.
We're all learning. This is a pivot for every single one of us, I think. So just thanks for everyone's understanding that we're learning the technology too. So yeah, so thank you again. And if anyone has questions that you still want to ask, feel free to email me and I'll add them to my clearinghouse that I'm going to send Will. And if you have any anything, like just email me if I don't know the answer. I'm pretty good at finding out who knows the answer for you. So I'm happy to help support your businesses and we can all get through this together. So, all right. Thank you. Bye,
everybody.
everyone. Be safe.
Wash your hands.
Always.
Bye.
Bye.